Good morning, welcome. This is our third annual State of the Industry. I'm Ingrid Fenn, and I'm excited to be back together with each of you and this amazing group of industry leaders to reflect on what has happened this year and where the industry is going as we look to the future. As of this morning, we had over 1,000 participants registered, so I know a lot of you are also looking forward to this special event. Before we get started, let's hear an introduction from our panelists. Chandra, can we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Ingrid. Chandra Dandapani. I'm the CEO of Global Workplace Solutions at CBRE. Glad to be here.
Scott?
Thanks, Ingrid. Great to be here. Scott Nelson. I'm CEO of Occupier Services at Colliers, and really looking forward to the discussion today.
And Aubrey?
Hey everyone, I'm Aubrey Waddell, and I am the incoming Chief Executive of Global Occupier Services at Cushman & Wakefield. It's great to see you all. Thanks for having us, Ingrid. Really appreciate it.
And huge congratulations to you. So we're really happy to hear about the news. And Neil?
Hi everyone, congratulations Aubrey, very well done. Neil Murray, CEO of Work Dynamics for JLL.
Great, thank you all for that. The commercial real estate industry has always had to be adaptable to change, but in recent years, we've seen an unprecedented disruptions due to the pandemic, economic pressures, remote work, and shifting tenant preferences. And as we all know, the industry will continue evolving, bringing new challenges and opportunities. And today we're going to discuss key trends shaping the landscape for 2024 and beyond. One of the most noticeable shifts is the growing emphasis on flexibility. Companies are increasingly looking for office solutions that can adapt to changing needs in terms of layout and lease terms, and demand for flexibility has led to an emergence of co-working spaces and hybrid working models. Aubrey, how has the perception of flexibility in office spaces evolved over the past few years, and what factors have contributed to this change?
So I think primarily what we've learned is that heads down work by oneself can be done almost anywhere. So the office really has to take on a new purpose. It's not necessarily the place that you can put your head down and focus. It's something that supports community, brings people together, provides connection, space for interaction, celebration, and it's about making places. The other thing I would say around flexibility in office, it's about being able to flexibly deliver services. You don't necessarily need everything every day. We're hearing from clients that different days of the week mean different things. And what does that mean for your service delivery?
Thank you. Scott, can you add to that? And can you also touch on how remote work has shaped the way companies perceive the need for traditional office space?
Sure, thank you. So I totally agree with Aubrey's comments to start, and maybe I'll take a little different spin on it. So one is, when it comes to flexibility, the occupier activity, transactions getting done, approvals, business cases, there today is such a materially higher percentage of clients' transactions that have more flexibility built into them. Business cases now are absolutely required to have exit strategies laid out in detail, quantified. And so that need for flexibility has come a long way and a lot more complex these days, and the data required to get to that point. Of course, you have footprint reduction happening across many occupiers in many industries. And we did a survey. We all do surveys regularly last year, most recently. Most said they were going to continue to reduce footprint through 2026. So that requires flexibility. You have day-to-day scalability or flexibility, where now there's opportunities to turn portions of your space on or off, which then creates more activated space for that space that is being used. And day-to-day that can change. So real opportunity there. And then last, on the perception, another way of looking at what Aubrey mentioned about heads down space is now trying to bring people into the office and show them the value of the office. There's now been this shift to, it's not all about collaboration space and event space, but actually providing private space as well in the office, so people do feel like they can get all of their work done and maybe even provide more than what they're getting at home with these amenities, which I know we'll talk about. As far as remote work goes, the impact has been incredible, of course. Data now, I mean, several years ago, we were all saying, we're so interested to see how this data plays out and what that means as far as utilization. Now we have the data, so we're able to use that. And, you know, productivity is something for some companies. There's now very compelling data on productivity losses on Fridays, as an example. And as a result, they're looking for every lever to try to use the office, show the value proposition of the office to the business. Remote work has obviously been a significant factor there.
So Neil, both Scott and Aubrey talked about the need for flexibility and really how remote work is impacting that. How are you seeing your clients strike the balance between accommodating for remote work and still maintaining the right presence of physical space that supports collaboration and those needs to be in the office?
Sure. Look, I think intuitively one would think that the two concepts of hybrid and flexibility are totally sort of aligned, but it's a very challenging circle to square. I mean, if you think, yeah, sure, flexibility has never been at a higher premium for employees, but we refer to the hybrid paradox, the notion that clients are facing competing demands on the one hand to cut costs and shed unneeded space, and on the other hand, most are being asked to encourage office attendance. So with average attendance in the US now being at, I think, 2.9 days per week, often peaking on Wednesdays, the occupancy space requirement algorithm is super complex. We've seen success when companies look at the notion of flexibility holistically. So really acknowledging work style preferences and creating interesting spaces where people can work as they want to work, while being much more prescriptive on what they expect in-person attendance to look like. So I think Scott mentioned it, but the notion of creating we spaces and me spaces helps employees appreciate flexibility while kind of maximizing the utilization of the assets. And I think, you know, finally, from a services perspective, technology is now allowing us to manage spaces much more dynamic on a real-time basis, predict utilization and incorporate flexibility into all of the delivery models, which has been a massive game changer for the industry. But I think in summary, we have to be more prescriptive on when we want people back, when we want teams back, and be disciplined about managing those numbers and managing and tracking what's happening. It can't be a free-for-all and work to maximize flexibility and utilization.
So that's really interesting that you're saying that. And I think we've had companies that have tried for or are still today implementing mandatory specific days, specific employees. There's even other organizations who've gotten really sophisticated with it and used algorithms to think through who needs to be in the office at the same time from a collaboration perspective. This coming out and saying that, I think, is a new thing, that we need to be more prescriptive about it. And Chandra, I'd love to hear your perception on that, what your clients are thinking as well, because I think as an industry, we've shifted back and forth, and there hasn't been this really, let's agree on a definitive strategy, so to speak.
Right. As what you've heard already, Ingrid, hybrid work is definitely the new norm. And our research shows that 80% of current office occupiers have adopted and will continue to sustain hybrid work policies. So how do you strike a balance between the two, right? Interestingly, the more flexible, like Neil was saying, the more flexible the hybrid work policy is, the harder it is to predict employee behaviors. And by extension, it becomes harder to predict how much total space is needed. So companies are putting some rules of the road on hybrid, including which days different teams come in. I think fundamentally with hybrid work, companies are starting to, though not all of them are doing so yet, they really need to rethink how they review utilization data, how they visualize it through the lens of peak and non-peak demand, and not just weekly or monthly, because that increases the accuracy of future estimates in terms of the quantity of desks they may need, or, you know, me space or we space. Also, what we are seeing is collaboration spaces are being utilized at a much higher percentage throughout the day than individual desks. And we are encouraging our clients, and we are starting to see clients starting to count alternate workspaces in their overall office capacity. that's one simple way they can update their portfolio performance metrics to really measure the reality of hybrid working. And so from a real estate perspective, we refer to the shift as what we used to be just in case to just in time, because, many clients plan space ahead of time with a predetermined ratio of seats to persons. And because they signed long-term leases, they would also add in headcount growth and held some amount of vacancy. So that resulted in a lot of space that wasn't well utilized, especially in the early years of the leases. With hybrid work, excess space is not only a cost issue, it also impacts in-office experience, because when you show up in an office and it feels half empty, because even if a lot of people come into the office on any given day, if there's a lot of space, it feels half empty, and that creates a negative cycle where others don't want to be in the office. So what we see clients doing is combating this challenge by definitely right-sizing their space to align more with their expectations of employee return to office patterns. They still need to solve for peak days and at the same time growth over time. As Scott was saying, we are seeing landlords respond to this by including flex space in buildings that traditional tenants can leverage on peak days or as their headcount grows. Also, providing underutilized spaces like training or large conferencing at the building level so that tenants have access to those spaces and they don't have to build it out themselves. And finally, offering more flexible terms. I think Scott touched on this. The key takeaway, though, is hybrid work commonly offers space optimization opportunities, and that can yield anywhere between 10 to 50% space savings, depending on how aggressive a client is about flexibility. And understanding that is definitely going to be important in unlocking portfolio efficiency.
So building on many of the concepts that Chandra was just talking about, Scott, can you talk a little bit about the role of co-working spaces and how that's going to continue to play a role in addressing this demand for flexibility within the working model?
Yeah, we absolutely see it'll play a key role and already is starting to. We're bullish on this asset class in general as it relates to the value proposition that it brings to occupiers. This obviously includes landlord operated flex or co-working as well. For across our client base, more and more today, there's a significant increase in the amount of transactions we're advising on where flex is considered next to traditional options. So that continues to grow. The supply, of course, has expanded, matured, and it used to be that there was really maybe only one flex option that fit, and now there are a lot more in each neighborhood. So that's also presented more probability that there will be a good fit. Another challenge for flex over the past few years has been sublease competition. Sublease has been attractive versus or compared to flex. And so that's hurt some of the opportunity for flex. And there's a lot of data now, as we've all seen, on the sublease availability is continuing to get taken up. So as a result, we see more opportunity for flex going forward when that happens. And just the value proposition of flexibility in general, of course, it's all been touched on. It's just now it continues to be more than ever. The value of flexibility is worth paying for in many cases. And then, topping it off, we're talking about all the amenities and all these new perks that come with this high-end office. Well, in a lot of cases, outside of maybe corporate headquarters locations or hub locations, there's not as much opportunity to provide that same experience, that same high-end finish, the amenities, and so flex can play a role there as well.
So just to that point, Neil, how are we continuing to see lease terms evolving to accommodate this growing emphasis on flexibility?
I mean, this is a super difficult topic. Since the pandemic, there's, as you said, an elevated share of short-term leases in the market. We would consider short-term to be deals below a 36-month term. Historically, that's been about 5% of the market, but it jumped to 15% in 2020, and it's probably settled around 12% in 2023, which is still sort of way above historical levels. I do think it's important to remember that the occupancy situation is still evolving. A third of companies are now mandating office attendance at least 3 days a week. And every week we hear another mechanism, as you said earlier, being launched, whether it's formal attendance tracking, and in some cases, clients talking about bonus eligibility being based on achieving minimal attendance levels. So it is dynamic and changing. I think real estate in general continues to evolve from more of a commodity to, or a factor of production, to more of a consumer product. More pre-built spaces, I think Chandra mentioned, technology integration, more flexible lease terms, and of course, hospitality services being the minimum expectation. But the flexible office model has been around for decades. And just as an industry, we've struggled with the sort of mismatch between underwriting cash flows and shorter lease durations, and that continues to be a challenge. But I think we're seeing investors and occupiers exploring alternative models that maybe more closely resemble retail and hotel deal structures. So revenue share models, fee-based management agreements, and all kinds of interesting models to try and square this circle.
Thank you. So in addition to flexibility, the commercial leasing market space is seeing an increased interest in top buildings due to competitive job market and really the desire, as we were just talking about, to motivate employees to want to leave home and return to the office. And employers are now realizing that the quality of buildings along with amenities and programming within are more and more important. This flight to quality is really pushing owners to invest in buildings and upgrade in common areas and generally improve tenant experiences. Aubrey, how have the dynamics of the commercial leasing marketplace evolved, particularly with the increased interest in top buildings? And can you highlight key factors contributing to the current shift in tenant preferences and the flight to quality?
Well, we have to make going to work worth it. And so landlords have become increasingly the enabler of the purpose of the coming to work. So we are seeing top buildings that are heavily amenitized, that are in places where people want to spend their day, getting all of the attention, candidly. What we're seeing, what clients are telling us, is that the quality of the space just matters even more. It's got to be at least as good, if not better, than the work from home environment that they're trying to get people out of. And one thing I will say, just around lease terms and amenities, we are seeing increasingly, it was initially sort of anecdotal, but we're really starting to see a shift here, that the amenity of having flexible space in a building is actually something that tenants are looking for. So they want to shrink their footprint, but they want to know that they have flexibility. And the amenity of flex space, whether it's heads down space or space that you can gather, conference space to meet with clients, is becoming more and more important, and more important as a landlord offering.
Great. Scott, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, great points. As we all know, the flight to quality is not a new concept. I mean, this happens in every down cycle. What's different about this cycle is, one, the spread between these top buildings, these trophy buildings, and even the Class A, traditional Class A, and certainly B buildings, significant spread between the economic terms of those transactions. And then using this, now we occupiers are trying to use these amenities, these trophy buildings, as another reason to attract people into the office. And so that's certainly a different dynamic that's changed. Of course, it brings so many other qualities that complement where a business is trying to head, how they're trying to grow, talent attraction and retention for sure. Another key, which again it has been the case in a down cycle even more today, though, is the opportunity to reduce the amount of space. We've all talked about that, and upgrade and still keep costs relatively consistent. So a big opportunity that's presented itself there. Another is, with all the challenges going on in capital markets, with vacancy in many of the buildings outside the trophy buildings, in some cases, these trophy buildings are the buildings that have the healthiest landlords that can provide more certainty to the occupier, can provide significant tenant improvement allowance, and there's certainty that it will be delivered. So that's created even more attraction to that type of asset. So data point on New York. So in 22 and 23, each year there were more transactions over $150 a square foot than had been seen since 2008. So again, that very high end part of the market is seeing just tremendous activity. And ultimately, the corporate real estate executives, real estate consultants like us, are having to do a lot of education to the C-suite in order to approve these transactions, because they're reading every day that the office market is in big trouble. So there's that disconnect also.
Great, thank you, Scott. So a couple of you touched on the concept of using quality of buildings to attract employees to come back from home to the office. But Chandra, how has the competitive labor market overall influenced employers' decisions to invest in, spend more money in premium office space? And are we seeing this be industry specific or across the board?
Yeah, so first of all, labor markets remain competitive, particularly for highly skilled jobs or high performing talent. And I don't think that's ever going to go out of fashion, right? So employers are seeking every advantage to differentiate themselves against the competition. And many employers, particularly those with an office first mindset, which we see largely in the financial services industry as an example, recognize that a high quality, well designed, well located office that Aubrey was referring to can be both a recruiting advantage and a driver to bring people back into the office. And as we've talked about earlier, premium buildings do tend to offer more amenities, more security where neighborhood safety may be a concern, convenience, whether it's access to parking, transit, retail, you name it, right? All the services. So what we see for majority of our clients who have portfolio optimization initiatives underway, it's not as simple as just shedding space, but it includes relocating to more efficient, better quality space. And when looking at lease alternatives, our research shows that 3 key factors seem to stand out. And the first one, no surprise, is employee considerations. And then, of course, followed by lease terms. And third, interestingly, sustainability. So our clients review various employee considerations from proximity to public transportation, and interestingly, to childcare availability, to office amenities. And on sustainability, employees across all generations in the workforce are becoming increasingly focused on the environment. So selecting premium office spaces, for example, that have ample sustainability features, obviously not only aids in carbon reduction goals, but also contributes to employee engagement and well-being. And that seems to be more important. And Scott alluded to this earlier, because many occupiers are able to reduce their footprint in alignment with hybrid work, they are making the case to reinvest in being in nicer buildings or nicer workplaces that are more attractive to their people. We see that across industries, and some industries are willing to spend more than others. And finally, thoughtful workplace design itself that accounts for new ways in which people work, more collaboration space, dedicated focus areas, technology, all that helps create vibrant work environments and makes great talent want to work there. What we also see is as clients seek to reduce real estate costs, location strategy and optimization is becoming an increasingly important consideration. And for clients who do decide to do something about their location strategy, especially when it comes to headquarters, the mandate to do that and be successful with that comes all the way from company leadership and not just from real estate. Those are some of the considerations that we are seeing and across sectors.
Great, thank you. You touched a little bit on sustainability, and green building practices are really no longer optional, and with an increasing focus on environmental responsibility and energy efficiency, sustainable design and operational practices are really becoming baseline guiding principles. Neil, how has the perception of sustainability in operations evolved in recent years? And in your opinion, what factors have primarily contributed to this shift?
Yeah, thanks, Ingrid. Just building briefly on Scott and Chandra's point, I mean, this is another dimension of why those demands of the bifurcation in the market between the very best spaces and the average spaces is so stark. It's from 2000 to 2001, from 06 to 07, the sort of previous peaks of the market, we saw premium buildings sort of backing off a little bit in terms of rents as more defensive strategies came into play. We haven't seen it this time. This time it's different. Revenues and headcounts have largely held up, number one. But number two, the sustainability dimension that you mentioned, Ingrid, is so vital. Companies are making decisions. 77%, I believe, of the lease renewals of our top 100 occupiers last year were tied to carbon commitments. I think companies are finally moving from intention to implementation. There was a lot of conversations and intention and ambitions over the last number of years, but we're seeing things really moving now. I mean, for investors, it's affecting their ability to raise capital, it's affecting underwriting, it's affecting financing. And for occupiers, this dimension of brand and reputation, as well as the ability to attract talent. So, 80% of office buildings that exist today will still be in use in 2050. And that means that 3 to 3.5% of them will need to be retrofitted per year to meet 2050 net zero targets. The current run rate's around 1%. So that rate needs to triple in simple terms. I think over the next few years, we'll see demand for green buildings outstrip supply by a factor of 3 to 1, as our research is telling us. So we have to look at retrofitting existing stock, and I think markets will find a way. We'll move from operational sustainability to whole life carbon perspective, and we're seeing that already. And with emissions from retrofits representing, I think, about a third of the emissions of new builds, I think there will be that shift towards retrofitting and repurposing existing buildings. And of course, regulation is going to force the pace of change.
Chandra, I'd love to hear you build a little bit more on that if you could.
Sure. Sustainability is definitely higher on the agenda now than at any time in the past, and is no longer a nice to have. And last year, we released a survey of commercial real estate professionals worldwide that showed more than 2/3 were intensifying their focus on sustainability. And interestingly, majority of companies are willing to pay a premium for sustainability features in buildings, whether that's on-site renewable energy or smart technology to reduce energy usage. And Neil started talking about this sustainability reporting, compliance, and voluntary standards landscape has become so complex for commercial real estate. And we're not even fully there in terms of a lot of regulatory requirements in place yet, whether that's CSRD in Europe, California climate law, you name it, right? So, and local regulations in cities like New York, for example, and that will continue to shape company priorities and roadmaps. And so against this backdrop, I think driving sustainability progress forward is being seen by many of our clients as frankly overwhelming. So as service providers, I think it's our responsibility and obligation to help our clients by simplifying that complexity. And we need a roadmap that cuts across, whether it's transactions, projects, or managing facilities and operations. And no surprise if you'll hear me say this, all of that has to be informed by accurate and actionable data. And we also need to address the biggest piece of the pie, which is scope 3 or supply chain decarbonization at scale. So companies are doing various things. I think it comes down to having good, clean, accurate, actionable, and frankly, verifiable data for our clients. And at CBRE, we use a variety of partners and data sources. And this landscape is going to continue to evolve because the needs are complex. I don't think the solutions are fully embraced yet by the industry in a way that makes it easy for our clients.
I really like that you highlighted actionable data, because I think across the industry, we've set a lot of goals and expectations and aspirations for the future, 2020, 2050, et cetera. But when we think about what the baseline is and how we determine that and how we measure against that, I think generally we've fallen short from that. So it's such a critical point. And to that, Aubrey, can you share examples of organizations or clients that you work with that have successfully embraced sustainability as a guiding principle in their real estate strategies?
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to say, I think Chandra said it perfectly. Clients are overwhelmed by what lies in front of them. So it's really our job to give them actionable things that can be done. So some of the things that we've seen, we have one client, big financial services organization, that's doing a lot of integrating climate risk into its portfolio strategy. That is absolutely completely data-driven. And it's actually a tremendous shift from what portfolio strategy had been before, where clients might be looking at favorable labor market, favorable cost base and leasing, but none of that works if you have a climate risk and people can't make it to the office. So that overlay is something that we're seeing, like I said, in financial services for sure, but also in many manufacturing facilities where that workplace is not going away. People need to be able to get there. It needs to be a safe place to go to work. So climate risk, that would be the first thing. And it's absolutely actionable. And there's a lot of good data out there to inform those types of decisions. The other thing, and I think we're all seeing this, is clients on a programmatic basis really implementing sustainable or green leasing programs. That's become table stakes. Again, something that is sort of an update that they can make and take forward as they're renewing leases, entering new space, or even subleasing. One thing that Neil touched on is the importance of these net zero projects and retrofits and how many of them have to happen in order for all of our clients to achieve their carbon goals. So really programmatically looking at their portfolio and understanding what can they do at scale to their portfolio to help reduce their overall carbon footprint, and to do it in a cost-effective way, which has to be done on a portfolio level and at scale if we want it to be truly cost-effective. And then, even at the very building level, how are clients are, doing everything that they can to optimize actual building performance through digital IFM solutions, just-in-time maintenance, understanding when something is going to fail so that they're not spending more energy on it than they should. Obviously, everything that we've done with lighting retrofit and understanding how space is utilized and not heating, cooling, and lighting spaces that are vacant.
Thank you, Aubrey. Scott, we have time for maybe one example from you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One that's more maybe notable and exciting on our end is seeing clients, CRE leaders actually taking responsibility for the corporate sustainability. So becoming the corporate sustainability owner. We just saw this again with a recent role that was filled. So we think a really exciting opportunity for our industry.
Thank you. So Neil, how do sustainable practices contribute to the overall health and well-being goals of office spaces? And how are you guys talking to your clients about that?
Yeah, I think just building on some of the great points made by Aubrey and Chandra and Scott, I think on the notion of net zero and scope 3, when we committed to science-based targets, and I think we were the 6th company in the world to have science-based targets certified by the Institute. And, in retrospect, it was quite early to do it, to be fair. But presenting to the board and explaining to the board that we were going to commit to these targets that weren't in, directly or in our control, in the sense that our scope 3 emissions, as Chandra referenced, our scope 3 emissions are the real estate emissions of our clients' buildings. So we have this sort of symbiotic relationship where the point will come where we can only work with clients who are serious about this. That's a big point to make. But as we're all getting our act together, it's a collective. I mean, as an industry, I'm looking forward to working more closely with our partners on this call to come up with standards and ways of working. This shouldn't be an area where we compete, but an area where we collaborate. I think on the notion of health and well-being, it's just such a special and exciting time in commercial real estate. When you think that a third of employees say they feel a lack of energy while working, another third say that their company is no longer a good place to work. And so bringing together the notion of thoughtful, intentional, sustainable design that incorporates work preference, things like lighting levels and fresh air and green space, but I think holistically thinking about employees' mental, social, and physical health. So sustainability for me means focusing on the holistic health of a company, all of a company stakeholders, its clients, its employees, and society as a whole. The shift in focus to true sustainability and all of these issues, a very bright future for the industry.
Thank you. Scott, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, great points. I 100% agree, Neil, and that's ambitious for sure. I love it. Maybe a couple of things I'll add. One is, again, the opportunity for corporate real estate executives, professionals. Ultimately, in a lot of cases, they own the footprint of these companies. So just a tremendous opportunity to make a difference. And, bringing it down to tactics or reality in the past couple of years with the pandemic, indoor air quality obviously has become such a focus and so important, and it ties into bringing people into the office. It ties into employee attraction and retention. So the companies out there that are really focusing on that, and it ties in even to the flight to quality as well, as I think Neil mentioned earlier. So just good opportunities across the board.
So I wanted to switch focus a little bit, because what would a state of the industry be without a conversation around technology? Technology continues to revolutionize the commercial real estate industry. And in 2024 and beyond, I think we can expect to see even greater integration of tech-centric solutions, including AI. And this question goes to everyone, but we'll start with you, Chandra. How has AI already impacted your organization? Can you share specific use cases where AI has demonstrated significant value in improving efficiencies or decision-making?
Sure. Last year when we spoke, I mentioned that we're investing in integrated solutions that leverage data and technology to evolve the way we deliver FM. And we refer to it as Smart FM, which has specific AI machine learning models built into it. Ingrid, I've been pleasantly surprised by how quickly that's been picked up by our clients. And we implemented that in over 1 billion square feet across 25,000 plus sites. And interestingly, we're seeing tremendous interest in advanced insights that come through analytics platforms that leverage AI. And I'll give you 2 use cases. One, condition-based maintenance, HVAC maintenance as an example. It's turning out to be a very promising use case, AI-driven models that help reduce cost and actually improve reliability. And the second is as simple as being able to predict projects that may have issues in terms of delays, or even predicting what we refer to as accounts receivables. So there are a lot of examples both on the technical side as well as what I would call mundane workaday processes that we are seeing machine learning models actually starting to make an impact. What I would say is our industry still has a great amount of manual processes compared to other industries. So I think our industry can benefit greatly from efficiency through AI. Key to realizing the potential, though, is to get the data right. And the companies that get the data right in terms of quality and availability will be able to massively take advantage of AI in our industry.
Great, thank you. Aubrey?
Well, Chandra stole my thunder because I couldn't agree more that quality of data is really what matters. It's the single biggest success predictor of any technology tool. There's actually not some sort of magic technology that is going to pick you the perfect site or make your employees happy. If you don't have underlying data that it relies upon that's accurate and that's accessible and that's safe. So we look at leveraging AI as a tool to ask data the appropriate questions, because the truth is the data is dumb unless you know what to ask it. And the data is dumb if it's not complete, if it's not accurate, and it's subject to interference if it's not safe. So our strategy around AI is first making sure that the data is accurate. That I think, and Chandra, it sounds like we would agree, that's sort of a service provider's first priority, is making sure that we are delivering and maintaining accurate, complete data to our clients about their portfolios.
Thank you. Neil, I know JLL announced back in August about a GPT for commercial real estate. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that or other initiatives that are impacting your organization today.
Sure. Yeah, we launched JLL GPT, which wasn't the most inventive name in the world. I know back in August last year, as you said. It now has 24,000 active users. It's, I think, the first secure large language model built specifically for CRE. And I think Chandra and Aubrey were talking about, AI as applied to specific areas of whether it's portfolio or project management or indeed facilities management. This is becoming how we do things at JLL. It's absolutely astounding how fast and what pace the models learn to be able to interrogate the data we have as a business that we've accumulated over, a couple of 100 years of existence. So it's becoming how we work. It's involved in portfolio optimization decisions, predictive maintenance, lease abstraction, fast-paced visualization, and then even in capital markets, the horizon tool we have is predicting when buildings and portfolios are likely to trade and to whom. I think, though, I just had the privilege of just spending a week at Davos a couple of weeks ago, and as you can imagine, AI was everywhere, and just, dare I say it, some snake oil out there in terms of what it can and can't do, and a little bit of hyperbole. It is about the data, absolutely. I think CRE is driven by people for people, and I think it will remain so. I think how we need to think about AI is about augmentation and improvement in human performance and productivity, more like the introduction of the PC than the introduction of the internet, which wholly disrupted business models. So to sort of talk it down, the impact on our industry in the next 10 years will be phenomenal. Every single dimension will be impacted. But I think it's, as I said, an augmentation thing that improves performance and productivity rather than something that completely disrupts the business model.
Scott, as you're sharing how AI has impacted your organization, can you also touch on how that has translated to your clients and what challenges you may have encountered in implementing AI solutions within your client organizations?
Sure. The 4 companies on this phone, the amount of data that we have built over so many years, harnessing the power of that data and making sure, as has been mentioned, that we deal with the risks associated with the data privacy, confidentiality concerns. That's been something that our folks, our experts within the business are spending a lot of time on, making sure we do this in the right way. And then also we're looking at it from an advisory, augmenting our advisory capabilities and what outcomes our clients end up with. So there are those initial opportunities. I think Neil just mentioned lease abstraction. We saw that was low-hanging fruit, and we've seen significant improvements there in both cycle times as well as being more cost efficient, which we can translate to the clients. Portfolio analytics and business intelligence, active pilots going on there, which is pretty exciting on how AI can bring different advisory, maybe something out of the norm compared to what human may look at with that data. And so combining those two, we see tremendous power there. There are other early implementations, things like space planning, occupancy planning, 3D visualizations, where again, the time involved in creating these and being able to manipulate them and iterate on them, the time that it takes to do that now has just been a huge improvement. When you get to your question about how things have impacted some of the ways we're doing business today, I'll start in occupier services, the business planning process. It's now integrated into how that works, how we unleash our talent that's best suited in that area, and how we hold people accountable to assessments, recommendations, actually implementing pilots. There's tons of risk and reward in this area, of course, and ROI analysis on what is worth it. As Neil mentioned, there's a lot of noise that you've got to get through. And so I know for us, we're thankful that we've got talent within the business that are legitimate experts that can really help us navigate all this.
Great, thank you so much. Chandra, are there specific AI-driven innovations that you believe will become industry standard? And apart from AI, what other technological advancements do you see playing a pivotal role in the future?
I don't know how soon or how far what I'm about to say will become an industry standard, but I'm hoping that among the companies on this call and working with our clients, if we can get to certain standards of data quality and governance, it will help this industry migrate much faster towards leveraging AI than otherwise. And in terms of what other technologies, first of all, I think we'll see a much higher level of automation in our industry, not at the expense of giving up on the immense talent that we have, but actually is more augmenting of the talent, whether that's leveraging more robotics, IoT, and I've already talked about mastering data quality and availability. Other than that, Internet of Things, whether that's smart FM, smart portfolios, will continue to progress. Blockchain, I think blockchain hasn't quite picked up in our industry yet in terms of transforming property ownership or how transactions are recorded and managed. And of course, now that Apple has come up with a new device, augmented reality, virtual reality, and finally, advancements, I think, in sustainable building materials. As sustainability becomes much more of a goal that has to be attained, I think we'll see more advancements in just building materials and how innovation that happens there. So those would be some thoughts.
Thank you for that. Neil, can you add to that other AI innovations that you believe will become industry standard and other advancements you see for the future in technology?
Yeah, look, I think the theme of the team, Ingrid, have covered most areas. I think the notion of, truly integrated, robust, curated data, a myriad of data points being sort of intentionally curated and integrated to be able to drive a completely different level of insight decision making where we going. I think our industry is littered with sort of aborted projects and sensors that are unconnected because it was sort of somebody's idea to transform how they were doing things. And the industry has moved on at such a pace now where all of these kind of myriad of data points are being integrated towards a very intentional outcome, whether it's, carbon management or employee experience or whatever it is. So I think that the theme will be just smarter, better, faster on decision making across the board. We have, you're aware, $500 million prop tech fund, part of the organization called Spark, that invests in early stage prop tech startups. And there is always a hype cycle with these things, and you're never sure which ones are actually going to land and disrupt the industry. But we just want to stay close to them, understand them, and see them early. a really interesting one, a bit left field, Ingrid. Flying under the radar, if you'll pardon the pun, is drone delivery. Right? I mean, I don't know if we're aware that Walmart, for example, has said down in Dallas that 75% of the Dallas-Fort Worth area is going to be covered by drone delivery by the end of the year. It's just one city. We're seeing it in cities all over the place, which is just something that's not really discussed, and how it's going to affect logistics and et cetera, and retail in general. So yeah, lots of exciting changes to come.
That's fascinating, very exciting. So unfortunately, we are almost running out of time. And in conclusion, I just wanted to highlight some of the fascinating topics we covered today. The landscape, I think, for the future continues to be dynamic and changing, and key influencers such as flexibility and technology, certainly sustainability and remote work are here today, and they're significantly shaping the industry and what it will look like in the future. And I think, what we've highlighted is that adoption is the key to success, and recognizing these trends and creating strategies accordingly will be essential to thriving in this marketplace. And as we wrap up, I really just wanted to thank our panelists again for their thoughts and leadership, and love to hear a last few words from each of you. And so maybe we could start with you, Scott.
Sure. What I'd like to say, Ingrid, thank you for the opportunity to have us on, and really what you do day in and day out. I think it's commendable. The advice you're providing to clients, they're benefiting from it, of course, but also our four businesses are benefiting from it in the approach to collaboration and win-win partnerships. And so keep doing what you're doing. I think it's definitely the future in our industry. And what some people might say also the blurring of the lines between CRE and management consulting as an example. So exciting times to come, and thank you.
Thank you. Chandra.
Ingrid, first of all, I want to echo Scott's comments, and also thank you for everything you're doing to continue to support women in real estate beyond everything that Scott mentioned. I would close by saying our industry has proven resilient, even though the past year has had challenges in terms of lower transaction volume and broader economic uncertainty. This is the time our clients need us the most. And the work we do in this industry helps companies all over the world do their best work, whether that's manufacturing vaccines, running banks, or manufacturing, et cetera. So I'm very encouraged by the opportunity in our industry to continue to impact all the things we've talked about and continue to collaborate and not just compete. So I think the best days are ahead of us.
And very exciting to see even more female leaders than men on this panel today. So yay to that. Aubrey?
What impresses me about any of these, and thank you, this one is so well curated and the content is exceptional. So thank you, Ingrid, is how much I learn from my colleagues elsewhere. I know today we've had a lot of people listening that have learned a lot. It also is really compelling about what this industry brings to people who are looking for where they want to make their career. There's a lot, we touch so many different people, industries, talents by virtue of what we do. And this is a great reminder of what we're doing every day is so inspiring to so many, and why so many people should be interested in joining the real estate industry.
Thank you. And Neil?
Thank you, Ingrid, and fantastic job. And as the ladies in the call mentioned, it's nice to be in the minority for a change in a real estate call. So thank you very much for putting this together. I'm super excited about this time in the industry. It's been a bumpy ride for real estate. You'll have seen in public company figures that our capital markets and our transactional businesses have been somewhat muted over the last 18 months or so. And at the same time, the outsourcing businesses that we all run, this panel run, have grown. The level of complexities, with clients are coming to us for ever increasing levels of advice and support. I'm excited by how many areas real estate now touches. It's about the very nature of work. It's about the workforce. It's not just about the workplace anymore. And I'm very proud to be a part of it. So as in the sentiment of what everybody else said, I'm really keen to do much more collaboration with the leaders from the other organizations to take this industry forward together.
Thank you all again. And thanks to all the participants for joining us. We hope you found it valuable as well. Everyone have a great day. Take care.